Subscribe for true stories, ghost stories, and monster sightings. Stay tuned after the stories for the life or death question. Target. Expect horror. Pay with your life. This world is a strange one. Target is a superstore chain, almost as big as Wal-Mart. With that massive territory and loads of customers pouring in and out every day, horrific encounters must occur on a day-to-day basis. I'm sure we've all encountered strange or terrifying people at Wal-Mart, or heard stories of stalkers and creepers using the superstore as a hunting ground. But just because Target is the cleaner and smaller alternative to the big blue giant, that doesn't mean it has less freaks and tales to tell. In fact, I am about to share with you 3 true Target scary stories. Put down that grocery list. You might be shopping elsewhere after this. Number 1. Target Ghost Story. Submitted by Scantronn. I have always preferred shopping at Target. Walmart is such a huge chain, and everyone goes there. No matter what I do, it seems like a fight just to get some bread or a gallon of milk. There are people everywhere, and the aisles are so thin, at least at my local Walmart they are. Now, this took place in northwest Georgia, in a town I had grown up in. Now 50, I remember a time when all we had was a very tiny Walmart that was nothing like the massive chain it is today. Eventually, the town got bigger, as small towns usually do, and sadly, I miss the days where you could know everyone in the town and greet them by name as you pass by. Nowadays, no one greets anyone anymore. Anyway, I've shopped at Walmart for years before I decided to try Target. I was just so tired of the rude customers and employees at Walmart, as well as the terrible layout of the store. I used to enjoy shopping. Now, every time I made a grocery list, I got anxious, ready to come home before I even left, if that makes any sense. Well, this story took place about a year ago. I was at Target to pick up quite a bit of stuff off of an extra long grocery list, as I had been putting it off for a while. Now, that night, the store was pretty empty, which was weird. It's odd to see any place like Target so empty. It was probably 8 o'clock at night. Definitely a weird time to go grocery shopping, I know, but I've always been a bit of a night owl. As I was leaving the tissue aisle, I heard something fall. Instinctively, I walked backward to bring the aisle back into view. For a moment, I didn't see anything out of place, but then I saw that a package of toilet paper had fallen from its place off the shelf. I assumed that I had skimmed it as I had walked past, or that someone in a different aisle had moved something, causing the package to fall. So, ignoring it, I continued on my list. The next item I needed was Windex, which was just adjacent to the tissue aisle. But the moment I entered the aisle, about 5 different bottles of spray cleaner fell from their places on the shelf. When they hit the ground, a couple of them busted and sprayed chemicals across the floor. This startled me, to be honest, but at that point, I still assumed it was just an accident caused by terrible placement or someone in a different aisle behind this one. Before I started to push my cart again, I swear to God, one of the busted bottles that was motionless on the floor slid to me like someone had kicked it as hard as they could toward me. But no one else was in the aisle. I had been looking in that direction when the broken bottle just took off. That did it. I was finally starting to get spooked. Apparently not spooked enough to just go home, though. No, I found myself trying to find more people to be around so I could calm down. Rather than just forgetting the grocery list and driving home, I just kept on shopping. I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe I just wanted to get the damn shopping done at last. Or maybe I was still so sure that nothing weird was really happening. I tried to have at least one other person in the aisle with me for each remaining item on the list. Of course, most of the people that were actually at the store that night were in the food aisles. And by most of the people, I mean literally the 3 other folks that were shopping there that night. So I got to the frozen food section, where the freezer lights go on and off depending on the motion in front of them. At the end of the rather long aisle, there was a man standing still on the right. He didn't seem to be going anywhere, so I started scouting out the Cool Whip. But when I stepped forward, the lights in the freezers didn't come on. I didn't really notice it until I was halfway through where the whipped toppings were held. In fact, none of the freezer lights had come on, save for the light where the man was standing. This didn't really creep me out. I mean, maybe there was just something up with the bulbs. I didn't really give it another thought. Not until I noticed the very first set of lights on both sides started flickering in unison. What the hell are the odds that both lights on both sides would start flickering at the same time? It was then that I decided it was time to invade someone else's personal space. I walked ahead quickly until I was standing with my basket right behind the bald man. The man didn't move nor budge in any noticeable way. "Sir?" I almost whispered. I didn't really mean to say it, but I was very scared at that moment, and I needed to hear someone else's voice. Still, he didn't so much as flinch. He didn't turn. He didn't respond. He didn't do anything. Come to think of it, the lights to the freezer next to him shouldn't have stayed on. The whole situation was beyond weird. I pulled my basket back and decided to come up around him. I looked behind me first to see those two freezer lights still flickering somehow simultaneously. When I was next to him, I still couldn't see his face. He was slightly turned toward the freezer, casting the side of his face in shadow. Keeping my eye on his face, I walked forward until I could finally see him completely. I was both bewildered and terrified. I could see his lips moving constantly, as if he was chanting or muttering something over and over as quickly as he could. And he was smiling, but he wasn't blinking. In fact, he still wasn't moving any other part of his body, save for his lips. But no sound came from them. I had no idea what he may have been saying. Instead of being a curious idiot and trying to get his attention again, I simply left my basket where it was, despite the items inside, and walked toward the checkouts. I was done. I had no earthly idea what the hell was going on in that store, but I didn't want to be a part of it anymore. It was time to go. As I approached the checkouts, I noticed that there was no one around, and all the lights were out to the checkout lane lights. You know, the little numbers that light up to tell you which lanes are open. Apparently, none of them were open, and there were no employees around to ask if I needed anything or to check me out. This only made me walk more quickly toward the exit. Now, at that point, I wasn't walking. I had begun running. I ran toward the exit. I stepped over the rubber mat at the door, waiting for the thing to open automatically, just as it always did. Nothing happened. I walked closer and finally tried to pry the damn thing open myself, but it didn't budge. I could feel tears falling from my face. I actually felt like my life was being threatened. If I didn't get out of that store, I knew something terrible would have happened. And when all the lights in the place went off, I screamed. Through teary eyes, I could see the parking lot as I beat on the door. Even though there were dozens of cars parked out there, I could not see a single person. No movement either. Where had everyone gone? When I walked in maybe a half hour ago, the plaza was pretty lively. People walking into nearby stores, folks holding conversations just outside. Yet now, everyone was gone. I had never been so scared in my life. I beat the door, trying with all my might to break the glass. I wanted to grab something to throw at it, but I was too horrified to turn around. I was completely alone, but I felt as if I was being watched. Just as I thought I was never getting out of that Target, the doors slid open, and I fell onto the ground in front of me. I looked back. All the lights were on. Customers were being checked out, and employees were tending to their shifts. It was as if nothing had happened. Within half a second, everything had returned to normal. Even the folks in the parking lot were as they should be. I got up, and without any care toward the people around me, I ran back to my car. It may be one of the most unbelievable sounding stories you've ever heard, but it happened to me. I wish that it hadn't. I honestly wish I didn't have a story to share with you, but here I am, telling all of you about a very terrifying experience. If I had any advice for you, it would be this: do what needs to be done during the day. There's no place safer at night than your own home and around other people, because at night, the most terrifying things happen, and entities that could care less about whether we lived or died are the most active. Be safe out there, everyone. Number 2. Stalker from Target. Submitted by 27Ha72. I assume, being a guy, you never really think about being in danger unless a situation warrants it. It might be sexist, but I feel like women have caution on their mind more often than men do. I mean, until this experience, I never really paid much attention to people or cared for what was going on around me whenever I went out. But just because I'm a man doesn't mean I'm not going to be targeted. It doesn't mean I'm safe. Now, this story happened in 2009 at the Target in Elizabethtown in Kentucky. Well, as far as I know, there's only one. Anyway, the day before this happened, I had met up with friends at our favorite bar. We all planned to meet up the following day to go camping for the entire weekend. I had never really been that big on camping, so I knew immediately that I needed to get some gear and prepare for the weekend ahead. The next day, I drove to Target to buy what I thought I needed. When I parked and stepped out of my car, the first thing I noticed was this strange man. He was standing in the middle of a parking space next to one of those cart corrals where you're supposed to place your basket when you're done. He seemed to be watching people as they headed inside, staring at them for several seconds at a time until he could no longer see them. I felt a little weirded out at that moment, but okay, I made sure to lock my doors and I started walking toward the building. I glanced every other moment or so to make sure the man wasn't staring at me, but about the third time I looked over, his eyes were locked with mine. And the guy was smiling, baring his teeth in a big, wide grin. I almost jumped. It freaked me out so bad. Instinctually, I looked away, feeling awkward and a little bit threatened. The guy was way bigger than me, after all. I didn't really enjoy having him staring at me. And even after I looked away, I could feel those eyes drilling into my back. I just ignored them as best I could. "Hey!" someone behind me shouted. I knew, without a doubt, that it was that man. I walked faster, blatantly choosing not to acknowledge him. As soon as I entered the store, I felt so relieved. I don't know if that guy was drunk or what, but the further away I got, the better. After shaking it off, I walked to the outdoor section. I was looking for coolers and outdoor cooking equipment. I had in mind to cook a hobo's breakfast, as my grandpa called it. It's a mix of everything breakfast: scrambled eggs, spicy sausage, and diced and fried potatoes. It's delicious and easy to make. In my younger days, my grandparents would often serve it for breakfast whenever I spent the night. I figured I could show it off to my soon-to-be campmates. I rounded one of the aisles and almost jumped out of my skin. That guy was standing there across the aisle, staring right at me. I paused and looked back, expecting him to say something, anything. For the longest time, we stood still in a sort of standoff, yet neither of us spoke. Every second that passed, my anxiety turned to anger. What was with this guy? Did he really have nothing better to do than bother me? "What do you want?" I finally broke the silence. I was pissed. But he didn't say a word. He simply kept smiling. I would even dare to say that his smile grew a little. It freaking creeped me out. I turned and walked out of the aisle toward the clerk nearby. When I was next to a few other people, when I felt a bit safer, I turned around. And sure enough, the freak was at the end of the aisle where I was only a few seconds ago. To be honest, I got chills. I was being followed by a guy 3 times my size. Being a guy myself, I never thought I'd actually be stalked by someone. But this man acted like he wanted to hurt me, or worse. I got out my cell phone, thinking I'd call the police. But it felt, I don't know, weak. I was pussing out. Surely I could handle the guy. I couldn't fight him, but I could at least ignore him. If he got any closer, though, I'd definitely call someone. Well, I tried my best to keep on with my business. I wanted to get the ingredients to the breakfast I had planned, and a cooler to keep them in. But I was pretty sure getting a cooler would mean backtracking to the sporting goods section. So I thought, screw it, could borrow my grandpa's, and headed toward the food sections. I glanced behind me almost constantly. I felt very paranoid, and rightfully so. The creepy guy was still following me. He wasn't even trying to hide it. He was at least maintaining the same distance as before. He wasn't getting any closer, nor was he getting further away. If it came down to it, it was plenty of distance for me to get in my car, start it, lock it, and take off before he could reach me. Now, I haven't mentioned it yet, but I'm a small guy. Yes, I've always been very insecure about it. No matter who you are or where you are, the guys around you will pick on smaller guys. Sadly, I guess that's just the way it goes. I wish it wasn't. It's always been very frustrating to hear people mock me for being shorter and frailer than others. I'm sorry, should I try to go back and change my genetics? Anyway, being in college, people are more mature than they were in high school, so I hadn't really thought about those insecurities as much. But that day, being followed by someone even bigger than the kids that used to pick on me, I was feeling anxiety in dozens of different forms. I was scared. I was angry, nervous, flustered, you name it. At that moment, walking towards the food, unable to ignore the presence of the guy behind me. I wished I had always worn a taser or pepper spray on me. As it was now, if the worst actually happened, it'd be a fistfight or a massacre. Instead of stopping to browse, I walked quickly, never stopping to grab something. If I saw what I was looking for, I'd just grab it on the go. Eggs, sausage, potatoes, easy. I already had the eggs I wanted in sight. I wasn't brand picky. I grabbed a dozen and kept walking. I glanced behind me again. I dropped the eggs. They broke on the floor. The man was now about a yard away from me. An explosion of emotions rose to the top, but anger won out. I'll try to skip the profanity here. "What do you want? Why are you following me?" I screamed at him. He donned that stupid, freaking smile. And as usual, he had no reply. "I'm calling the freaking cops, man. I'll let them handle you." I got out my phone, making sure he saw me. He just stood there. I backed up a little, dialing as I went. Before I pressed call, his smile turned into a frown, and he actually walked away. Slowly, I put my phone back in my pocket. Was it over? Was he finally going to leave me alone? I watched him until he vanished beyond denial. After calming down, I looked around to see that at least a dozen different people had seen what had just happened. A kind mother with her daughter actually asked if I was alright. I told her thanks and that I was fine. I very shakily finished up my shopping. I was even able to go back and get myself a cooler in the outdoor section. All the while, though, I never stopped feeling paranoid. Not 1 second did I feel safe, no matter how many people were around. I'm surprised I never tripped or fell or ran into anything. My head was turned in either direction almost constantly, trying to figure out if I was still being followed. But thankfully, I never saw the guy again. Hastily, I paid for my stuff and exited the place. I was so ready to go home. Going camping sounded amazing at the moment, to get away from humanity and all the creeps in town. Time to just hang out with my friends and take it easy. And boy, would this make for an interesting story around the campfire. When I got to my car, I was more pissed than I've ever been. All of my windows had been busted and broken. Back glass, windshield, side windows, all of them shattered. There was glass all over the interior of my car and scattered across the pavement. Worst of all, painted in big white letters on my hood, excuse what I'm about to say. I'm only reciting what that hateful idiot spray painted on my car. Was the word faggot. Now, I'm not gay, and I have nothing against homosexuals. I couldn't help but be incredibly angry that anyone could still be so narrow-minded and homophobic like that. And to think this was nothing but a hate crime towards someone that didn't even match the hate. I don't know if it was what I was wearing or if it was because of my size, but I don't think I'll ever know why he targeted me, why he assumed I was gay. After that experience, I had a newfound respect for the LGBT community. If you brave people have to put up with jerks like that, it must take courage and patience. It's disappointing knowing the amount of hate the world has, and to know that that man might have killed me had he had the chance. It scares the hell out of me. So, be careful. Number 3. Waiting at Target. Submitted by Parker Peter. My girlfriend used to work at the Target down the road. At the time, we lived in Houston, Texas. I was a bit in between jobs for a while, and she was a full-timer at Target. She had a closing shift, and since we only had one car, I had to pick her up every night. I didn't mind though. I actually loved just sitting in the dark, listening to the radio. Sometimes I'd even fall asleep until she was knocking on the window to get me to unlock the doors. I never truthfully thought of it as creepy, and I'm not saying that to sound tough. Night was too quiet and calm to be scary to me. It was the best time to relax or focus, whether you needed a break or get a lot of work done. So, I was waiting as usual. It was about 15 till 10, and Target closed at 10, I believe, so there were still a few folks going in and out. Ashley always complained about people coming in at the last minute when they were trying to close up. I don't blame her. I bet that would be pretty annoying, especially if you had to stay longer. At one point, an older lady stopped at the side of my car. She looked in at me, then jumped. I almost laughed. She must have realized someone was inside the car. Maybe I should have kept it running. I don't know why she jumped though. I mean, what else would you expect to find in a car? Anyway, the 15 minutes passed by slowly. For a while there, I started to feel watched. Again, this is unusual for me. I don't just get all freaked out for no reason. Eventually, as I had been laying back in my seat, I found myself pulling the seat back up. It felt somewhat safer. Suddenly, I couldn't wait for Ashley to come out so we could get the hell out of there. I decided to actually start the car and turn up both the heat and the radio. Finally, at about 10:15ish, I saw Ashley come out of the building. She walked about halfway toward the car, then stopped. I was confused. I could see her frown, and then she covered her mouth with both hands. Then, frantically, she began waving for me to come over. Already pretty paranoid, I got out of the car and jogged over. "The hell, what's up? Are you okay?" I asked, obviously worried. Oh my god, was all she managed to say for a few seconds. "Ashley, what happened?" I tried to get her to answer me. There was someone in the back seat. Jesus Christ. I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand on end. What did she just say? What did she mean? There was no one else in the car with me. She had to have been talking about something else, someone else's car. She said it again. There was someone behind you. When I came out, I swear to God, I saw someone behind you. I turned and stared at the car. It was still running, the neon light from the radio reflecting off of the leather seats. There was no one in the car. Why are you messing with me? I was starting to get annoyed. I'm not joking, she insisted. I was still staring at the car, both hoping that I would and wouldn't see someone in the back seat. We must have waited there for another 20 minutes. I was too creeped out to get back in that stupid car. But Ashley was serious. If she was really joking, she'd be obvious about it, and she would have eventually stopped. But there we were, waiting in a parking lot because of something that couldn't have been a prank. Plus, that old woman from before who stopped and jumped when she looked in at me through the window. She must have seen something. I have no idea what happened that night. I'm not sure if it was some sort of spirit behind me, or if there really was a person in there riding with me that had somehow sneaked in and out of the car without me noticing. Either way, the possibilities are rather terrifying. I don't feel safe when I come to pick her up anymore. And I always keep the interior lights on when I'm waiting. I wonder who or what those two saw that night. But I really wish that that woman would have had the kindness to tap on the glass and at least let me know someone was there with me. Whether you're doing some shopping or simply waiting out in the parking lot, you're not safe from the horrors that are born of those red circles. Sometimes, when there are hundreds of people to cower behind, the crowds themselves can act as cover for people that want to do you harm. So, even though you might just be out to buy a gallon of milk, keep your eyes open, because if you don't, someone may be waiting in the back seat of your unlocked car when you're done. Good night. Be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Thanks. And are you ready for the life or death question? Okay, here it is. Would you rather be stalked by a man with a knife or haunted by a ghost in your home? Personally, I'd have to go with the ghost. It may be terrifying torture every evening, but it would also serve as proof that there is more beyond this physical life. Besides, maybe it would all go away once I moved houses, right? Right?